If you could travel back in time, what vehicle would you want to use? The TARDIS, a DeLorean, a hot tub? Throughout history, we have been obsessed with time travel, and a good deal of us want to go back and change the past, badly. Well, we have good news for you. Here are 10 theories that prove time travel actually exists. Enjoying your time here at The Richest? If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel by giving a tap on that red subscribe button. Also, be sure to turn on those notifications by clicking on that gray bell. If you forget, you can always go back in time to fix it. 19th century CD. Could it be that the Mormon Church all started because of time travelers? Before anyone gets offended, hear out this theory. There's a pretty compelling case that Joseph Smith may have obtained compact discs back in the 1800s. Remember the story of how an angel showed Smith where to find the gold plates? There's a theory that they were actually CDs. In this painting showing Smith showing the plates to 8 people, there's something bizarre. Look at the box that Smith is holding and look at the top. That looks a lot like a CD case, doesn't it? According to some, there are references to CDs in the actual Book of Mormon. In fact, how Smith describes the case for the plates is compelling. He even mentions that the case has a hinge like a pair of spectacles and that the plates were 2 stones in silver bows. And we know that CDs are silver, but apparently this isn't such a crazy theory. According to a time travel researcher named Ronald Pegg, he claimed that CDs have been floating around ancient times for quite a while. Also, there's a theory that the angels that are reported in religious texts were actually time travelers bestowing knowledge to our ancestors. The Chronovisor. While the name the Chronovisor sounds like a name straight out of science fiction, there are interesting accounts that support its existence. The Chronovisor is a device that was used by the Vatican to look into the past as well as the future. It is supposedly one of the best-kept secrets in the world, but we're talking about this to you right now, so maybe the secret isn't that well protected. In 1972, a newspaper in Italy released a story that talked about how there was a machine invented that could photograph the past. The device, which we now know as the Chronovisor, was invented by an Italian physicist turned priest named Father Pellegrino Maria Ernetti, as well as getting help from Enrico Fermi and Werner von Braun. There's also a theory that the Chronovisor was a gift from the United States government. Father Ernetti apparently used the device to witness events like the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and even composed Thyestes and brought it back to a modern audience. If the antennas were in the right place, the Chronovisor could even take a peek into the future. Before he died in 1994, Father Ernetti insisted that the device wasn't a hoax. Montauk Project. The Montauk Project was supposedly an experiment in time travel and psychological warfare that was headed by the United States government. Rumors of this secret project began making rounds in the 1980s at the Montauk Air Force Base or Camp Hero. There was apparently an incident in 1983. Let's jump back to the 1940s. Apparently, Nikola Tesla figured out how to make the USS Eldridge disappear. 2 brothers, Edward and Duncan Cameron, were on board the vessel and jumped off, and they ended up in Montauk in 1983. Apparently, when Tesla made the ship disappear, he opened up a wormhole that sucked the ship into the future. Remember the Philadelphia experiment? Yup, this is it. So the Cameron brothers were in 1983 in Montauk, and apparently they were sent back in time to destroy the technology on the Eldridge. If this all sounds insane and like the perfect plot for a TV show or a movie, you should be a Hollywood producer. The story and incident at Montauk actually inspired the Netflix show Stranger Things. The show was actually originally called Montauk until the show creators moved the setting to Indiana. Time-traveling mummy. What would you do if you unearthed a mummy that was wearing Adidas sneakers? In 2016, a partially preserved mummy was found by archaeologists in the Altai Mountains at an elevation of about 10,000 feet and is believed to be about 1,500 years old. Only the feet and one hand of the mummy were found, but that's all they needed to see something odd about the deceased woman. Archaeologists were the most interested in what was on her feet. After the photos of the mummy hit the internet, some people went nuts because the design of the footwear looked remarkably similar to the design of Adidas. Along with the mummy, there were supplies found like clothes, an iron kettle, and a mare that seemed to have been sacrificed. Maybe this woman was indeed a time traveler and the locals gave her a proper burial when she didn't survive her trip? Who knows, but the findings are certainly interesting. Historians have also mentioned that there were amazing strides made in footwear 1,500 years ago, so it could all be a fantastic coincidence. Project Pegasus. Andrew Basiago, an attorney based in Seattle, Washington, claims that he was part of a secret U.S. government program called Project Pegasus from the time he was 7 until he was 12. The program was part of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they experimented with teleportation and time travel. Test subjects were both children and adults so that researchers could see the effects of time travel in both age groups. One of Basiago's proof that he was a kid time traveler is a photo of Lincoln in Pennsylvania giving his famous Gettysburg Address. If you look closely, you'll see a kid wearing oversized clothes from the time period with a haircut from the 1970s. Basiago said that he ended up attracting more attention even though he was trying to fit in. He claims that he visited Gettysburg through a plasma confinement chamber in New Jersey. Apparently, he was also present at Ford's Theater the night Lincoln was shot and visited several times and said the shot was terrible to hear. According to Basiago, the government had a legit teleporter that had 2 gray elliptical booms that were about 10 feet high between a shimmering curtain of radiant energy. Basically, participants jump through the curtain. What does that even feel like? Basiago says it's like you're either moving at a high speed or not at all. Hey, look at that! Let's put the pause button on time and take a quiz. Is that still time travel? Anyway, BBC's Doctor Who has graced our airwaves for over 50 years. Who doesn't want a Time Lord to appear from a blue police box and say, "Come with me"? Who brought back Doctor Who for our modern audience? The hipster. In November 1941, the South Fork Bridge in Goldbridge, British Columbia had reopened after a flood. There were plenty of cameras to document the occasion, and one photo from that day remains famous today. Among the people wearing appropriate clothing from the period, there is a guy wearing sunglasses, sporting a modern haircut, and wearing clothes like they should be from the 70s or 80s. Plus, he has a camera in his hand, and this was a period where handheld cameras weren't exceptionally popular. Because the photo was proven to be undoctored, people had only one explanation: time travel. But according to debunkers, sunglasses weren't unknown at the time. Also, the sweater that the guy seems to be wearing is an ice hockey shirt for the Montreal Maroons, which was a team that wouldn't disband until 1947. Also, handheld cameras date back to 1903, so there was some time for improving technology. So there's a good case to say that this photo isn't really of a time traveler, but the guy still seems out of place and looks like he's observing a moment in history. Whether you believe this is a time traveler or an oddly dressed man, there's one thing we can say for sure: hipster fashion hasn't changed since the 1940s. Old-fashioned cell phone. The first cell phone was invented in 1973 by Motorola and obviously went through quite an evolution throughout the 40-plus years, but it seems that there might have been cell phones as early as 1928, and it's not due to any incredible invention, but instead, it's because of time travel. On the DVD for Charlie Chaplin's silent film The Circus, there's footage of the film's premiere at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. You can see a woman coming in who looks like she's holding a cell phone to her ear. In fact, if we didn't tell you where the footage was from, you might believe that it was just bad surveillance video. But debunkers are trying to say that this was simply a case of the woman being hard of hearing and she was using an ear trumpet. But if a time traveler was going to visit someplace, an old-fashioned movie premiere would make sense. Then, another video surfaced from 1938 where we see a girl who looks like she is clearly talking on a cell phone. While debunkers have tried to explain the moment, saying that she was listening to a recorder, she is clearly talking to someone, unless she's recording her own voice while walking at the same time. Either way, the case is rather fascinating to say the least. Cape Scott Surfer Dude. According to this photo, maybe Marty McFly was a real person. So here we have a photo from the book The Cape Scott Story by Lester Ray Peterson, which was printed in 1974 and talks about the history of the town. There is a photo that was taken back in 1917, and it has an odd anomaly. There is a man with windswept hair, and he's wearing a baggy t-shirt and shorts. Also, you can see the people around him wearing button-up shirts and brimmed hats, staring at him as if they're trying to say, "Hey, what are you doing here? Who are you? Why are you wearing those funny clothes?" This surfer dude definitely looks out of place. Maybe he suddenly appeared out of thin air? That would definitely explain the shocked faces of the men around him. Maybe the time traveler saw the photo and said, "Hey, I want to be in that," and made it happen. In case you're wondering, the photo seems to be legit, and if you buy your own copy of the book, you can see the photo for yourself. Gold watch. During a dig in a tomb in China, an ancient tomb that was about 400 years old was opened. The tomb had been sealed for centuries, which meant that nothing was going out or in. Archaeologists reportedly found something rather odd. While removing the dirt around the coffin, something that looked like a rock fell to the ground with a metallic sound. Upon further inspection, they were shocked to see it looked like a modern artifact. A ring of a Swiss gold watch covered in mud was discovered with the time frozen at 10:06. And on the back, there seemed to be the words Swiss or Switzerland written. Switzerland didn't even exist until 1848, where before it was known as the Old Swiss Confederacy, so this watch predated the country it apparently came from. Of course, when this story hit the public, people seemed to have the proof they needed to confirm that time travel exists. But there is a theory that perhaps a rodent from a more recent time picked up the ring and then burrowed itself into the tomb. But how was the ring embedded in the soil that covered the tomb? This story has many questions with an endless amount of answers. Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is a well-known Hollywood actor for his work in movies like The Matrix and John Wick. Since he's been famous for a while, that means that he's been in the public eye for at least a decade or two. As we've watched him get older, we can't help but notice that he's barely aged. While it could mean he just lucked out in the world of genes, some have speculated that maybe he's immortal. All joking, of course, but then it was discovered that he bears a striking resemblance to people in the past. We're not talking from just a few decades ago, but centuries. The earliest depiction of a Keanu lookalike dates back to Charlemagne himself. The resemblance is pretty interesting, and apparently Charlemagne crowned his son as the next king right before he died in 814, and his body was buried in cold weather, which strikes suspicion. The next lookalike appears in 1540 in a painting done by Girolamo Francesco Maria Mazzola. Then someone couldn't help but notice that Keanu and Paul Mounet bear a striking resemblance. Interestingly enough, Mounet died in 1922, but his body was never found. Now the question is, immortality or time traveler? Who brought back Doctor Who for our modern audience? That would be Russell T Davies. If you could travel anywhere in time, where would you go? Tell us in the comments. We're sure you'll share some interesting answers with us. Before you go off exploring time, take a moment to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, or go back in time and take care of that. Also, be sure to give this video a like, and if you're in the mood for some ad-free viewing and tons more videos, click on that link to check out the premium.